gmail.com. And as always, we appreciate your financial support, and the donation basket is located at the sign-in table. And without your support, the monthly educational and informational meetings would not be possible. For your convenience, there are envelopes on the table too in case you forgot your checkbook. You can mail us back in a donation. Our November 2nd event will be held at the Range Riders Museum. Montana Attorney General Austin Knudsen and Alan Olson, who is the Director of Government Affairs for Northwestern Energy, will be discussing the lawsuit against BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard for illegally manipulating energy markets, causing an increase in price for us consumers. Montana has joined 9 other states in suing these 3 institutional investors for conspiring to artificially constrict the market for coal through anti-competitive practices. These 2 gentlemen will bring us up to speed on the lawsuit and will be available for questions after their presentation. Just a reminder too that the Miles City Mayor's election will be held on Tuesday, November 4th. The 2 candidates for mayor are Butch Grenz and Melissa Moa. And I think, did I see Butch come in?
He's here.
Oh, there, yeah, there's Butch. And just wanted to note also that there is an open position for the Custer County Election Administrator. That position, I don't know when the position closes, but you can seek out information on that position on the Custer County website. And looking forward to the 2026 election, there are multiple positions up for re-election in Custer County. These positions are, and there's a whole slew of them, Commissioner District Number 1, which is currently held by Jason Strofe, Commissioner District 2, which is held by Jeff Fakosh, the Clerk and Recorder, which is held by Linda Corbett, the County Attorney, held by Sean Quinlan, Justice of the Peace, held by Mark Hildebrand, Superintendent of Schools, currently Carla Bager, Treasurer, who is currently Tara Moorhead, the Sheriff and Coroner is currently Brandon Kelm, and the Public Administrator, who is currently Jody Berman. And the state offices up for election in 26 include District 18 Senator, which is currently held by Kenneth Bogner, and Greg Kometz has filed for this position. District 34 House of Representatives, Jerry Schillender, and District 36 House of Representatives, currently held by Greg Kometz. And it's my understanding that Ken Bogner intends to file for this position. So Reedy Pertz, who is a member of our Patriot Roundtable Planning Committee, has invested a lot of time and energy into the wind energy projects. And so I'm going to invite her to come on up to introduce tonight's speakers. We'll end the night with a question and answer session, so please make note of any questions and we'll grab them at the end.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to get this started and we're going to make it fast because we have a lot of information to share, and I have 2 gentlemen that I am very privileged to introduce. First of all is Mr. Rick Holden. He's a former state senator, a farmer, and he's also worked with insurance contract law. And then we also have Shane Eaton. Mr. Eaton. The shy one. He's a business owner, farmer and rancher. He's helping to create citizen-initiated development standards for our communities. Both of these gentlemen are doing that. We have a lot to share with you. We're going to leave a little bit of time afterwards to do a question and answer. So Rick will kind of watch our time a little bit, but I know we have papers down there. Rick has 4 papers, so I'm going to make sure everybody has 4 of his papers so you can follow along. So we'll get the rest of those out to you. And then Shane has, we'll hand his out a little bit later. So we'll go ahead and get started. Rick.
Okay, thank you. It's great to be here. A nice group, plus we have a lot of people online. What I'm going to start out with today is I'm going to go over some of the issues concerning wind turbines and the problems that we see in wind turbine development, and then when I get done, Shane will come up and fill you in on some of the solutions that can be used to regulate wind turbines and the placement of turbines and the things that are related to that industry as well. The first thing I want to turn your attention to is, I gave you a handout earlier, and this is a portion of, it just happens to be a portion of the Next Era contract that's posted on the internet, and it's for a contract out of Kansas. But basically all of your wind turbine development contracts are going to follow this format in a lot of ways. The main reason I give you this is because if you look at the first paragraph, you might wonder, if you've never been around wind turbines, what are the possible problems that a wind turbine could cause you? What would be the problem with a wind turbine that's generating electricity? You would think that would be a good thing initially, like I did. I was a big supporter of wind energy only 3 years ago, until I started getting into it closer and reading more about it and finding out what the impacts were going to be here on Montana. So I just go to the contract to see what the problems are, because the wind energy tells us what the problems are with their product, because they actually specifically write in their contract things that they do not want to be liable for. So they want to transfer the liability onto the person that has the contract with them. Things such as sound, visual, view shed loss, light, flicker, shadow, vibration, wake, that's wind wake, electromagnetic, electrical, and radio frequency interference. That's like your TV signal coming into your place, or your radio signal coming into your place, and any other effects. So if they don't list them in the contract, they have a catch-all at the bottom that says any other effects. So essentially they're telling us what the problems are with their product. And all of these points that I just mentioned to you are things that are going to affect your private property rights if you are next to them. It doesn't matter if you have one on your property, these are certainly going to affect you, and now you're liable for them, but the neighbors around you are going to have these effects on their private property. So it's wide encompassing. The most obvious thing that we want to talk about first is, let's just look at the height. The first thing you're ever going to notice on a wind turbine complex is the height. I brought with me a graphic to kind of put it into perspective for you. And some of you are familiar with the project that's north of Miles City. Those are the babies, okay? You're not going to see them that small anymore. If you think those were big, they aren't going to be as big as what's coming forward. The wind energy companies told us at the last legislative session that in order for them to generate more electricity, the turbines have to be bigger. That means the generator in the hub at the top of the tower has to be bigger and bigger and bigger so that they can generate more electricity per site. That's why they're so adamantly against any kind of legislation which would cap the height of their wind turbines. And I see Senator Phelan's here, and he carried that bill, and we had to sit through that hearing. One after another of the wind lobbyists came forward and said, do not cap the height, because that's how we're going to make more and more electricity. The problem is, what we're going to see is, across Montana, is the largest industrial footprint in the history of our state. We're talking about all of the counties from Stillwater, Yellowstone, Treasure, Rosebud, Custer, Prairie, Macomb, Dawson, over to Weevil, and southern Richland County already are going to be linked together in this project. So if you count up all of the wind turbines that are projected to go in starting next spring, you're going to be looking at 1,000 turbines. Minimum. That doesn't count all the ones in effect that are already down by Baker, around the Crazy Mountains, Judith Gap area. The idea, from their point of view, is to cover eastern Montana with a wind turbine on nearly every section they can get a lease. If you go to their information meetings and they put up a graphic you'll see that Montana, from the Canadian border all around the eastern front of the Rocky Mountains, clear on down now to Butte and south into the Dillon and the Big Hole area, they all have projected that these are the prime areas where they want to install wind turbines. A wind turbine is going to be at least a 5 megawatt operating turbine, which puts it at the size of the Seattle Space Needle. So each one of those turbines, you can see by the graphic, is going to be the size of the Seattle Space Needle, which is going to put it up in the 600-foot range. That's larger than what you're looking at north of Miles City. But that's not where it's going to stop. Because if you have the 6 and the 7 megawatt turbines, which is the next generation, then you're looking at something that is more in the 850 foot, more like the size of the Eiffel Tower. So that is where we're going. We're going to cover eastern Montana with towers the size of the Eiffel Tower out of Paris, France. We have a handout for that. Rini, do you have this handout? Okay, so you can see on this, this is an evolution of the wind turbine heights. And you can see as the years go by, they just get larger and larger and larger. And when they go out and get a wind contract with somebody on their property, they intentionally leave off any limitation for the height of the tower. So if you're a landowner and you signed up 8 years ago and you were looking out your window and you saw some demonstration wind towers that were about 200 feet, you probably thought you could live with that. But what you didn't realize, and what we're finding out, is that the contracts don't have a cap in the height. And so as these new generational turbines are developed and put up, they're going up in places where the people that signed those contracts had no idea that they were going to be the size of the Seattle Space Needle. Height is important because when you have all the red lights up there, you're looking at an area of at least 30 miles around each tower that it's going to be fully illuminated. So if you're in Seattle, Washington, they brag about the fact that you can see the Seattle Space Needle from 30 miles away in the middle of the day. If you're in eastern Montana, you can bet you're going to be able to see these things 30 miles away. I have another handout we can give. This is the one where the EPA came in. And what's really important that you need to know is that the blades, the fiberglass blades on these wind turbines deteriorate with the sun's rays. So as they deteriorate, they're made out of fiberglass, and the fiberglass starts to delaminate on the leading edge of the blade. There are shards, strands, and flakes that fly off these wind turbines and cover not only the land where they're leased and installed, but they blow downwind from the turbines and they cover everybody else's property. So you can see what happens is the taller we allow those things to be built, the further these fiberglass shreds go out across the property. And of course, as they go out across the property, they contaminate the soil. If you look at your next handout, you'll see that the EPA, well, in this handout, the EPA has already deemed that the fiberglass in those wind turbines is a hazardous waste. You can go to this site, you can read it for yourself to see the facts on what the EPA ruled.
We don't have that handout. Is that for everyone?
It's on the table, so you can get that one. Some people I see are holding it up.
Which one?
This one? Moving along. So the fiberglass blades are made of poisonous chemicals. That's just the easy way of saying it. They're made of PFAS, P-A-F-A-S, PFAS chemicals, which means, in layman's terms, we call it forever chemicals, because when those chemicals in the fiberglass go out across the property, they're forever there. You cannot get them back. They totally contaminate the soil forever. That's why the EPA calls them forever chemicals. These little flakes and these strands and these shards that go out, they contaminate your grass. So now your cattle can't eat that. If you have a grain crop, they go into the grain crop. Your combine picks them up. They go into the hopper. When you go to the elevator, that load is condemned. You have to take it home and dump it. You have to bury it. You got to burn it. It cannot be used. Same with grain corn. Any place where these fiberglass shreds are flying out across the landscape, they're contaminating everything. And not only that, they're soaking down into the soil, and they're contaminating now your water. If you have a stock dam, these fiberglass shreds go out across the stock dams. So your water, they float on the water for a while till they sink. And now you've got them in your water system. On this handout here that I have, this is an insurance policy endorsement. If you see on the top, it says an exclusion. There's an exclusion on the top. Did they hand those out to you? Yeah. Okay, I see some people got them. So I'm an insurance claims adjuster. I'm a licensed Montana insurance claims adjuster. So part of the time when I'm not farming, I'm doing that, and I'm reading the fine print in insurance policies. It's very exciting. But one of the endorsements that I see coming out now is this one in my hand. And this is getting attached to your insurance policies. You just don't know it until somebody brings it to your attention. But when I was talking about those PFAS chemicals, those forever chemicals, your insurance companies now are specifically excluding them from coverage. So if you're creating any kind of PFAS chemicals and they're polluting your neighbor's place, you're not going to have insurance coverage for liability on this because you've been excluded out for coverage. So now any claims that come forward are going to have to be defended by you personally, and they're going to have to pay any settlements out of your pocket. So I want you to have this so that you know this is for real. And if you have a farm and ranch policy, most likely you are now going to see this because the insurance industry realizes how dangerous these PFAS chemicals are to the environment, and they also understand how large the settlements can be when you end up contaminating somebody's property because you have this sort of chemical flying off your land onto your neighbor's land.
How's it detected?
Question?
How's it detected?
How's it detected? Okay, so when the leading edge of the blade starts to delaminate, visually, you can walk out and you can see these flakes like the size of a dime, a quarter, strands like maybe 6 inches long to a foot out on the surface of the soil. That's how you detect it to start with. You cannot physically, and the wind industry will tell you they will clean that mess up. They cannot. You cannot physically go out and pick up every little dime or quarter sized flake of fiberglass PFAS chemicals. You just cannot do it. The only thing they try to do is they strap on a backpack shop vac, and they actually think that they're going to take from miles and miles. They send out crews, and they take a shop vac and they try to vacuum up every little flake that they can visually see. But by the time they get there, most of the time the grass has grown up, you can't see them, or that fiberglass fiber is soaked down into the soil, and now you can't see it because it's in the soil. So there you go.
Sir?
I think that outlines mainly the biggest issues that we have. with these wind turbines.
How
And-
long before they start to deteriorate? 1 year, 2 years?
So the fiberglass blades generally start to deteriorate from the sun about 4 years after they're installed. Certainly by the time they're 8 years, they're already delaminating. If we get a big windstorm, the blades snap. When the blades snap off, they fly out fiberglass everywhere. Lots of fiberglass. When you snap the fiberglass blades, I've obtained photos where it's unbelievable. When the lightning strikes, these towers are very susceptible to lightning strikes. When the lightning strikes, it turns them on fire. When they go on fire, the fiberglass blades start to fall apart. They shred. And now you have shreds of fiberglass, and these things are like 250 feet long, whipping in the air. And as they whip in the air, all of those fiberglass go clear down miles downwind from where the turbine is installed. So that's essentially how we have it. That's what we're looking at.
Rick? A minute, we're gonna get questions at the end.
Yep, we'll take questions at the end. So that's the problem in a nutshell. What we're looking at, Shane has a few ideas on what we can do.
Thanks, Rick. Does everybody have this one? This is my handout. But I'll go ahead and get started on it. I'm just going to kind of skim over this. If you have any questions, let me know, because I'm going to go through it quick. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what's been going on in Prairie and Dawson and Macomb. This little map up here, while it's getting handed out, this isn't as good as Rick's maps, but this tells you where the turbine sightings are scheduled to go for the project in Prairie, Macomb, and Dawson. If you want to come take a look at it afterwards, please come up and you can see the scope of it. So nobody really likes zoning. I think everybody in here probably would agree to that, okay? But, and I put this at the top of the paper, is the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So the only way we can control these, because Senator Phelan gave an attempt, but he was severely outnumbered in lobbyists to try to bring some regulations into wind, solar, and batteries. So the only thing we have left as citizens in this state is to zone. And so that's what we're doing. And the reason I'm up here doing this is I put a few things up on top. I didn't like it when I was told I was lying a couple times. And so I didn't really like that. There's a big story behind that. There's a gentleman in Dawson County at a commissioner meeting, and we were talking about putting turbines up here in Dawson County next to a neighbor. And it was going to be on his property, this gentleman's property, and the turbines would be right next to the neighbor. And he was, and I don't really know the guy. He's an old guy, in the 70s, but he was brought to tears in a commissioner meeting, basically saying, you know what, I signed the wind contract, and I can live with it. But I can't live with the fact that you're going to put a turbine right next to my neighbor's house. He said, I'll regret it till the day I die. And that was a pretty tough thing for me to see, if somebody of that generation be brought to tears over something like that. So, it means a lot to people. And the developers haven't had any respect for setbacks for neighbors or landowners' residences. And so they've been really having a hard line on giving setbacks when they've said, yeah, we'll give setbacks, but they haven't done anything. So that's why I'm up here. I'm not up here for winning any awards, but I'm kind of up here helping out the neighbors. So everybody got the flyer. So we'll start at the top, number 1, type 1 zoning. And that's what we're doing in Prairie and Dawson. It's also called regional zoning. So like, I don't have a very good map here, but if you take, let's say this was a county, these 4 sections were a county, Regional zoning means you can take part. You don't have to take the whole county. In statute, you have to have at least 40 acres, and you have to have 60% of the landowners in that 40 acres. So in Prairie County, we basically, and I'm not sure, did you get that map of the Prairie County one? Maybe you didn't. The Prairie County, we basically did everything north of the river. It's almost half the county. And Dawson County, we kind of took in some area up here west of Lindsay. And
You have a black and white one?
yeah, the black and white and yellow one. I don't know if you have a better one or not, but I can show that. I was going to get this and I forgot. But so this is Prairie County, and you can see our map. It's in the white, yellow, and blue. So that's our regional zoning district map. It's not the whole county, it's just part of it. And I can pass this around. You can show the camera, then you can pass it around if you want. So in Glendive, if you've ever been to Glendive, they have two regional type 1 zoning districts. They have Highland Park and Forest Park. They're just little housing developments essentially. So this isn't like something new. It happens all over the state. It's just new to us over here. The next thing we have, number 2, is type 2 zoning. Type 2 zoning would be the whole county. The whole county. That's what Weibo did last year. Weibo zoned the whole county in order to control wind, batteries, and solar. And the reason you zone, it says there in type number 2, is for the public health, safety, morals, general welfare. So what does that mean? Well, that's a good question. Because it leads us to number 3, which is called interim zoning. Interim zoning is used when there's an emergency. So let's say there's an emergency. Well, what's an emergency? You know, Rick talked about a lot of things that you can have issues with the wind turbine, right? Is that an emergency for the neighbor? Is that an emergency for your water supply? So what is the definition of emergency? And this interim zoning has been used in other parts of Montana. One of them was in Missoula, actually. There was a data center, a little data center in Missoula they put in, but it was too loud. So the interim zone, so they could figure out how to have setbacks for this data center, because it has huge fans trying to keep it cool. They use it for a gravel pit. Somebody's going to put in a gravel pit right next to a residential area. And so they interim zone, which kind of means they kind of stop things so they can look at things, come up with some answers on how to develop it. We've tried to get that done here in Prairie and Dawson County to interim zone. We haven't been able to get the commissioners to do any of that because of a couple of reasons, but we just haven't been able to get it done. So that's your zoning in a really tight explanation. You have type 1, type 2, and interim zoning. Go ahead.
But really, to clarify that, type 1, type 2, and interim zoning, type 1 can be done.
Yeah.
About this, but type 1 can be done by the people.
Okay, that's right.
By the
you're right.
landowners, and I think that's the huge thing. People don't think they can do anything. Landowners can do something, and so Shane has been remarkable on making on the landowners. You can do this. You don't need the county. You don't need you. I mean, you do eventually, but you can get things together on your own. Type 2 is done countywide by usually county people.
That's right. So I can explain that a little bit more. That's a good point. Thank you.
Sorry.
On number 1 for type 1 zoning, it takes 60% of the real affected landowners in the map. So like the map that's going around, we have to have at least 60% of the landowners in that district sign to do it. It's like a vote. It's a legitimate vote in state statutes. So you can do it anywhere you want in the county. You have to have at least 60%, and you can set up your own regulations. Type 2, like Rini said, it's the whole county, and it has to go through the commissioners, has to be initiated by the commissioners. So there's a big difference there. And we've been doing type 1 in Prairie and Dawson because we haven't been able to get any traction at the commissioner level to do the whole county. If you got more questions on that, we can circle back. So number 4 is, why is this relevant to wind, solar, batteries, data centers, etc.? In my feeble attempt up here at a map, is the biggest thing is called trespass zoning, okay? Trespass zoning isn't really a legal term, but this is what happens. So here we have 4 sections of land, right? This guy comes up and puts 1, 2, 3, 4 wind turbines up, right on the property line. And these little dotted lines, I need a different color, but these little dotted lines shows you the wake, like Rick talked about, from the turbine. It's essentially taking all the wind based on the length of the blade. And there's a formula for that, I should have put it in here, but it's 15 times the rotor diameter. So you come here, 2/3, 3/4 of a mile, depends on the length of the blade, and you've essentially taken the wind from the neighbor. Same thing here, you take this wind, you take this wind, you take this wind, and you have this big circle of influence. You've essentially trespassed into the neighbor without paying him. You've done a taking, okay? You have a house over here, you have a house over here. But if you want to come over and enjoy the rest of your property, you can't. If you want to go develop, you can't. And so that's where the term trespass zoning comes in. And in number 4, part A, it's also called reverse eminent domain or inverse condemnation. Well, eminent domain kind of deals with governments, right? Well, these turbines are subsidized by the government. So the government is going in there and reverse eminent domaining by allowing this company to eminent domain your land, because now you can't develop it. So the government's playing hand in hand with the developer to have this taking. And so that is one of the biggest reasons we want to have setbacks. So if this neighbor wants to put in wind turbines, that's fine, but let's have it set up so this neighbor can also. And let's see if I can erase this a little bit, because this is what our regulations are all about. So here, this is just an example. This landowner puts his turbines up. He has a reach in the neighbor. This one puts his up. He has a reach in. Everybody agrees to set back. That might be kind of crude, but that's what we got going on. Is that we're all agreeing. Steve, go ahead.
And is that industry figures in pretty much?
So the industry, that's a good question, Steve, thanks. So the industry, they want to go all the time, and they started this a long time ago, 1.1 times the height. So if you have whatever Rick has here, 650 footer, you can go 710 feet back. So here's our section line. You're going to go 710 feet back and put a turbine. The only reason they have it 1.1 times the height, the only reason is because when the wind turbine gets done after 30, 40, 50 years, they're going to demolition it. And it's going to go like this. Fall down and go boom. They want to make sure they're far enough away so it doesn't land on your property. So when this thing gets done, they demolition it, they put the dynamite, and it falls right here. It just misses the property. So that's the only reason they do 1.1 times the height. You want to get scientific, it's 15 times the rotor diameter. That's how much this wind turbine will take all the wind for 15 times the rotor diameter before you want to put up another one. So if you have a 200-foot blade, that's 400-foot diameter, 400 times 15 is like 6,000. So you wouldn't be able to build another wind turbine for almost a mile away. And then that's scientific data, that's scientific fact. If you don't trust me, go to Google Earth and look how far the wind turbines are apart at Angela. And it's right there. But they want to start right here by the property line in case there is any zoning or there's any complaining, and then they can always go back. But industry standard is 1.1 times the turbine height. They take no consideration for the neighbor. or the neighbor's rights. Now, Rick talked about the agreement in Kansas with the effects at the beginning of his talk. You know, he talked about, you know, the sound, visual, light, flicker. That was in a good neighbor agreement. So what they would do is they would come in here, put this turbine up 1.1 times the distance from the property line, and they come to this neighbor and say, hey, guess what? We'll give you a little bit of money, but we want to lease all of these effects, like Rick mentioned, sounds, visual, light, flicker, shadow, vibration, wake, electromagnetic, electrical and radio frequency interference, and any other effect. And you can't build anything over here that's going to stop the wind. We'll give you $2,500, but then you can't. But then we're taking those effects, so you can't sue us now as a developer and a landowner. We're going to lease them from you. We're going to lease all these problems, so there's no problems anymore because we own them. And that's what they do as a good neighbor agreement. They have not offered, to my knowledge, anybody in this development a good neighbor agreement. They're just going to take it. They're just going to come over here and take it. Now, it doesn't stop there, because these blue areas on the maps are state of Montana land, okay? And if you look at the lease that the developer offered the state of Montana, they say this again. So this isn't just something you made up on the internet. What Rick got was not off the internet. What Rick had actually came from a gentleman in Kansas that I know that was offered the good neighbor agreement. But in the lease that was offered to the state of Montana, it says, quote, the leasee shall have a non-exclusive right for audio, visual, view, reflective light, shadow, flicker, noise, shadow, and any other effects attributable to the operation on the land. So the state of Montana, if they get their turbines on here, is going to give away these effects to the developer. And again, the state can't complain because the developer took it. But they admit to these problems. And then they want to build right here on the property line and introduce these problems to you up to a mile away. Other reasons for setbacks: water. The Perry County Health Chief Medical Officer, in commissioner testimony, he came up with a half a mile setback from a water source. A well, waterway, pond. And that's also seen in real life. Rick talked about it a little bit, but in 8 Points, New York, there's a wind farm run by a developer that's looking to develop here. And they had one of them start on fire. They had two of them start on fire, actually. And it went 1.5 miles. And it ended up in water. 1.5 miles. So that's why in our regulations, which should be, I think on the back of the paper, maybe it's another one, we have a setback in there for water. A couple other reasons for setbacks. On number 5 there, I have number D is the Montana nuisance law. And I just paraphrase it. It said, indecent or offensive to the senses, or an obstruction to the free use of property, so as not to interfere with the comfortable enjoyment of life or property. So if we come back here to the board, if you put one right here on the property line, 1.1 times the height, you just made a nuisance for the neighbor. All this is a nuisance. And so as a district, we decided we're going to have setbacks from each other so we don't give each other a nuisance and that person doesn't give me a nuisance. Straightforward. Part E there, the Montana Constitution. The state and each person shall maintain and improve a clean and healthful environment in Montana for present and future generations. Rick talked about a lot of stuff earlier. There's not a lot of a clean and healthful environment going on in a wind development. Just a fact. That's why we want to have setbacks, so we keep it off our property. Part 2, Section 3 of the Constitution, the right to a clean and healthful environment, then the rights of enjoying their lives and liberties and protecting property and seeking their safety, health, and happiness. If you have a big wind turbine right here, all your happiness is gone. You go over here to this house, it's probably not going to be very happy either. So that's why we decided to have setbacks in our regulations. Some of the same things Senator Phelan wanted to do in the last legislative session, but it didn't happen. So that's just a quick rundown on zoning, some of our setbacks, and I'm going to give you a little heads up what's really going on in Prairie and Dawson. So on the sheet, it's number 6. Prairie County, we turned in a petition of 101 landowners, okay? 101 landowners in that little map that's going around. Of those, 76 voted for the district. That's 75.25%. We only need to have 60%. So we're in a good spot there. And by my calculation, there's only 7 constituents of Prairie County that are landowners that have a lease with the developer. So you only have 7 landowners out of 101 that are actually leased out, that voted no against the district. So it kind of tells you what's really going on. You don't have a lot of support from the constituents. And that's a word in zoning is used a lot in North Dakota, is constituent-based zoning. So if we come here to the map, you know, and you have 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 out-of-state landowners want to put in a big development, and all the constituents, the voters of the county are like, cripes, we don't want this. We got to have setbacks. We got to have some regulations. Well, the commissioners are elected by who? Us, the constituents of the county, not the absentee landowner. So North Dakota puts this into their zoning regulations quite a bit, and that's something we're going to talk about in Prairie and Dawson County when we really get to the meat of the matter, is that we only have 7 constituents that own land that have a lease out of 101 that voted for the regulations in the park. So that's a big deal. Now, our petition in Prairie County to create the map that's going around and the regulations, it met the 60% threshold. We had 75%. Commissioners approved it. Now we're going to have a hearing on the 22nd of October. And that'll start the process moving towards the acceptance of the district. Dawson County, I'm not going to say it was a guinea pig, but they turned in first. And you got to have 60%. We're like right at 61, 62%. Because when we first turned it in, we were under the understanding that they're going to count landowners and landowner signatures in a certain way. Then that didn't happen. So like, my name is Shane Eaton. I have land deeded to Shane Eaton. If I had land deeded to Shane Lee Eaton, we were under the understanding that that's 2 votes, 2 different landowners. So we did all of our math and our figuring, but I don't think that's the case. So we had a little misunderstanding there. There was another little thing with the property that we didn't know, and so we thought we were at 68%. We're like right at 61. But that's going to be the same thing. We're going to be the 22nd of October, have a hearing, and then this thing will move forward. So what are the options on the other side of the issue of the developer? Well, I put a lot of things in there, and all that has happened. But the biggest thing is the other side wants to overturn an election. Prairie County had 75% of the landowners vote. It's a legitimate election. Certified by the clerk, certified by the county commissioners. It's done. It happened. It's no different than a primary and general election. Dawson County, the same thing. So they want to come in here and overturn it. So that really gets to the heart of the matter. Is who are the commissioners working for? The constituents or a big company from somewhere else? A little bit about the taxes. Senator Phelan tried to work on this with some of his colleagues up there. Just so everybody knows, I mean, we can't cut trees anymore. We can't dig coal. We make it really hard to do gas and oil in this state. So then we got to pay all the property taxes, if everybody knows that. You probably do. It's because we're not doing natural resource development anymore. Well, then the saving grace is wind and solar, right? Well, they're taxed at 25% the rate of other electrical generating facilities and coal, oil and gas. So we're going to get rid of oil, or get rid of coal, get rid of lumber, squeeze oil and gas, we'll bring in solar and wind, but instead of generating this much, we're going to only generate this much in tax. So I don't know who come up with that idea, but it's not very smart. Because we get to pay the difference. And we tried to do that last session. It didn't get anywhere. We can talk about that afterwards. What happened in the Constitution with the 73? We put a big severance tax on coal. Where'd all the coal development go? Across the border into Wyoming, because they have a low severance tax. The guys that dig coal are really smart. They know that if they dig in Montana, they got to pay more taxes. So they go to Wyoming and get paid less. But we don't have a severance tax on wind or solar. So we quit digging coal, no severance tax. Replace it with wind and solar. We still don't have any severance tax. So where are we getting the income? Property tax from you guys. This is the big thing I'd like to applaud Senator Phelan. He gave it a really good shot. But we are so caught up in trying to get wind and solar in this state that we don't make them bond, a decommissioning bond, until year 15 of commercial operation. That's a big thing. Coal mine, oil, gas, and once they applied for their permit, they've got a bond. Boom, done. You got a bond. Oil or wind and solar, you can wait till year 15. Because they want to help them out, I guess, they being the legislature. And so, why we do that? Because there could be a problem. Let's say that you get to year 10, things go bad, something changes, the wind turbines have trouble, they're more expensive to replace. What says they don't just walk away and leave the wind turbines and there's no bonding to clean it up? That's not made up, because that has happened, okay? And so we brought this up in Prairie, in Macomb, and Dawson. Senator Phelan tried to fix it, and it didn't work. But that's how much for risk we really have out here by not making them bond until you're 15. Okay, so the other thing you have to do is Custer County, Garfield, and Rosebud, in one fashion or the other, they all gave tax breaks to the Angelo development. You have your impact fee, which is kind of interesting. An impact fee is 1/2 of 1% of the cost of the development. So if they put $1 billion into Custer County, you would get 1/2 of 1% as an impact fee to the county each year for 3 years. Okay, I can't keep it straight in my head. I don't know if Custer gave a break on that, but I think Rosebud and Garfield did. Which makes no sense to me, and the constituents in those 3 counties should have been burning the courthouse. No, I shouldn't say that. They should have been up in arms by allowing a developer to get a big, huge tax cut, on top of getting a tax abatement on their property taxes. They came to Dawson and Prairie and asked, and I can't give the history of Rosebud and Garfield and Custer because it's a little confusing to me. Jerry might remember. But they want a 50% tax abatement on property taxes for 5 years. So the first 5 years, they just pay 50%. And then in year 6, it's 60%. You get to year 10, it's 100%. But in the meantime, everything gets depreciated. So it's a heck of a game. And for some reason, we let them keep playing it. And like I said, Garfield, Rosebud, and Custer County folks, you should be up in arms for how much money you gave away. One other thing that they had happen here in the Inflation Reduction Act that Biden passed, there's $280 billion saved in Medicare by renegotiating prescription drugs. So what they do with the 280 billion? They didn't reduce the cost of Medicare. They didn't. They could have done a lot of things. They could have gave it back to you, but they gave it to green energy instead to finance it. 280 billion. That was in the Inflation Reduction Act. That's a fact. So that one floating down the river. They also get a 30% production tax credit. So if the developer builds this, like they did in Angelo, they get 30% production tax credit. So if it costs half $500,000 to put up a turbine, they get 30% of that tax credit. Boom, done. You get a 30% manufacturing tax credit. So if you're, GE or one of the companies that manufacture it, you get 30%. And then they have a recycling tax credit, 30%. So we should probably all get in the wind turbine business because you get a lot of tax credits. And the last thing I'll just leave you with is they talk about, and this happened in the Prairie County Commissioner meeting, they were bragging about their zero emissions. Once you've been there to build that wind turbine, zero emissions, right? What emissions are there? Anybody?
Electromagnetic for what?
Well, you got electromagnetic, but the biggest thing is you have the view shed emission. You have the light pollution. I mean, I came back from Jordan the other night from a volleyball game, and I about to go in the ditch because all those things flashing. That's light pollution. That is being emitted. You have no dark skies, and so there's plenty of pollution going on. So that's a little bit on the tax issues and things. And then number 9, I'm not sure. I think Greeny might have followed up on the printing, but is there a front and back page? So number 9 starts with just a basic rundown of what our regulations are in Prairie and Dawson, okay? And I want to bring this up because it's super simple. We spent some time as landowners talking about this. This is the thickness of our zoning regulations. Like you look at other counties, they're like 50, 60 pages, like Webo's. This is. Well, there's 3 papers here, but it's 6, front and back here. But that's it. And the meat of the matter is we prohibit any structure over 199 feet. So if you want to build something over 199, you're not going to be able to do it in our proposed district, unless it's agriculture, because agriculture is exempt from zoning. That's a Montana statute. So anything over 199 isn't going to happen. And then the next part is we have setbacks for structures that are 0 to 50 feet tall, structures that are 50 to 149, and structures that are 149 to 199. And then there, in the 149 to 199 is when we get into all the setback distances. And we have benefited properties and non-benefited properties. So that's what we're doing in those 2 counties. And that's the basic meat of the zoning. Real simple. One other thing I'd just like to say is it's getting serious now, okay? Prairie County the other day, they passed a resolution accepting the petition of the landowners in Prairie County to create that map that went around, okay? That was on September 30th. That morning, Prairie County received a letter from a law firm in Billings basically threatening them, is what it was. And it said, you read 4 pages, you get the last sentence. If the county insists on pursuing the proposed zoning, however, I respectfully request that the county place a litigation hold on all records, documents, and correspondence related to the project. So, Prairie County, if you guys approve this today, we're going to drop the hammer. That's what the law firm said, representing the developer. So they basically took the gloves off and have threatened Prairie County with litigation. I hope that wasn't too fast. I hope some of it made sense. I guess if you got questions, Rick and I are hammer away.
Yeah, I got a question. Well, on the abatement we talked about, you said 5 years. I think those abatements are actually 10 years. As we've dealt with them in the county, they're a 10-year deal.
So yeah, the abatement would be like 50% for the first 5. Right, Dennis? So the first 5 years, they only pay 50%, and then on year 6, it goes to 60%.
Right.
Yeah, that's how it would work.
Right. Now, also in that, they come with flowers and candy and a cute boy on Saturday night. We're here to entertain you. But the dirty little secret, those things are centrally assessed, is what they are. If the county chooses not to give an abatement, which our county is not going to, they can go to the state and apply for that abatement and get that abatement. So it takes us out of it. You talked about Medicare. We're paying for it. Trump said it very well. These things are a scam, next to none. We get to not only enjoy the view shed we don't have anymore. My family's Plan D, Medicare went up 130% this year because we subsidized wind farms. I used to not have a deductible. Now I do have a deductible. As we stumble further and further through this thing, one thing, Ross with NextEra has come to county. Good old boys were listening and we're going to change things. And then the next breath, they bring in a piece of paper that you just showed us. If you don't behave yourself and mind yourself, we're going to sue you. And then, of course, you're legal. The whole world's on fire. You're going to sue us. I don't care. I was an Exxon dealer in Seattle back in the 80s and 90s. And a ship called the Valdez went down. And Exxon was on the nightly news every night, which those companies hate for those kind of things. When I look at this NextEra really want to sue a county with 1,100 people in it, struggle to get by, 50% of our land is state-owned or federal-owned. Do they really want to do that? Do they want to be on the nightly news every night? Big bad $150 billion company coming after a little old county. Do they want that? I would probably think they don't, because I'm the guy to stand up and tell them, this is what's going on.
Yeah, we'll find out here pretty quick, I think. Thank you, Dennis, for that. And the one thing Dennis talked about the centrally assessed, which is really important, is that, and I tried to bring this up to our legislators for last December, November, but there's something called the new and expanding business tax credit. And this is, I think, what Dennis is getting at. If you do a $50,000 or more improvement to your business, which most of us probably won't be able to do, because that's a lot of money, you can get a tax credit, a new and expanding business tax credit. So that really doesn't qualify for most of the small business owners. That qualifies for the people that do this. And so I'm like, well, what are we trying to do here? And so I think we should get rid of that and keep a level playing field, because why do we stack the tax credits at the top? I don't understand that. And so that's what Dennis is talking about. They can sidestep the county, I believe, and then use that new and expanding business tax credit in statute. But thanks, Dennis.
Yes, I'm hearing a lot about, how to put away this wind farm industry, and you hit on several points. I mean, there was like 50, 60 points, too many to speak to. So I'd like to speak in a general term. Where is our energy going to come from? Because I have been, from the Mississippi River to the West Coast. I've seen coal plants. You talk about pollution. You talk about light pollution. You talk about all these things. But I've seen, my brother-in-law lives below Colstrip. I'd like to have him here tonight, to speak to this. But we need new energy. If you look at a simple issue like Bitcoin, it takes the energy of all of Colstrip to do a small Bitcoin operation. Where's this energy going to come from? Do you have a plan B There'll be non-polluting, such as what? That cost less for the citizens that use that energy? You talk about taxes. Maybe there are 170 landowners there, but what about the citizens of your county? Do they get a voice in this about their tax and taxation of how they're going to come up for funding for their city and municipals? I mean, we need a new energy and more of it. And I don't hear a plan B from you guys. I just hear against.
Okay, so our regulations, to what your first point was about getting rid of them, it doesn't. We could have banned them. You can absolutely do that, but we don't ban them. We were wanting setbacks to protect each neighbor's property. And we put a height limit in there. That doesn't get rid of them. Okay, now where does energy come from? All this energy doesn't come to us. None of it does. It all leaves. All of our rates are going up because why? Because in North Dakota, where we get our power, they've shut down coal. They shut down coal and Savage. They reduced in North Dakota, put in wind, and then our rates go up. That's what is happening. So coal strip, did it pollute? It might have polluted in the day. I'm not an expert on coal strip.
I'm not either, but yes.
And so is there other options? There are other options that can create a lot of power that is clean. Now, are we going to do that? I don't know. I'm not in the energy business. I'm not in the development business. But as a society, you take us to a different point. As a society, what do we really want to do? Do we need to make all this power to make Bitcoin, to find Bitcoin, to run data centers? Because as a society, we're not using any more power as average families. We're not using more electricity. It's all going to Bitcoin mining and data centers. That's where it's going. They're they take the gas in the pumps in North Dakota, and they put up a little generator right there, and they put the Bitcoin mine right there. That's all it's going to. So the society, where do we need to have the power go? Look at the gas plant they just put in Billings. That was put in to subsidize the wind development, right? That's what they put it in for. That's a fact. Now they're going to use that power, when they're not using it, to go to the data center in Billings. So that's like a whole other topic, I guess, is what I would say. But
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Was anybody from the Wind Energy Corporation brought or asked to be here tonight?
I can't say that. I don't know.
Somebody wants to organize this? Somebody that's organized this? Can you tell me?
I don't believe they were invited.
That is.
Because it was informational. This is all new information to most of us on the committee as well.
Here we have
Okay.
Joe.
I'd like to say one thing about future powers is there's a thing called nuclear. 1 square mile of nuclear energy is in essence, I think I saw a statistic, it was over 66 sections. So you could take 66 sections of wind away and put up a nuclear plant. There's other options.
Think they'll let one about your county?
What's that?
Think they'll put a nuclear plant in your county?
Probably not because of power lines. We're small.
I mean, that's like
I'd be for that, like I was with that XL pipeline that was going to come through.
Yeah, that takes us to a whole different question. But where's the power going? All of Angelo leaves. All this power is going to leave. They're doing a connection in Southern Prairie County through Custer County with the power lines to make it all leave. So, if we really need to have the power, why do we put it here, ship it all the way to Washington, and have all that line loss? Okay, the amount of line loss builds one of these things. But anyway, that's a different conversation. I appreciate the points. We can talk later. But questions?
I'd just like to make a statement first. Benjamin Franklin says we give up all the freedom so we have security, and I think that's basically what was just addressed there. We need to give everything that we have up so that we can make sure we have power. And I think that's ridiculous. I think so. And I've talked to the people in the coal strip a lot, and they run 20% of the power most of the time because they have to save room in the lines for wind energy and solar energy. So if they wanted to, and so they're not very efficient because of that, because of how we've handled all this stuff. But anyway, one thing I was going to bring up was in your pollution deal is in Glendive, we had the radio station come several times, and they say pollution is really going to be a problem for them because we won't be able to transmit any signal if you have all these wind towers around there. I don't know if you want to expand on that any or not.
I would just say on that issue is that KXGN radio and the TV station, the signals that they send out are a constant signal. And when they want to put 70 of these wind turbines starting right at the Glendive Airport, right on the hills above Glendive, and they want to go west with them down the Bad Route exit. So if you have 70 of these things spinning, that cuts their signal. That's just what happens. So they receive their signal from Billings. If you want to listen to, like, Let's Talk About It or one of the other talk shows coming out of Billings, their signal is cut coming into Glendive because they can't make it through all the wind turbines. So it's the same thing for the TV. The TV signals going out of Glendive, out of KXGN, are going to be cut. Now, the Sturlockson family owns that, and they have a federal license to operate, which preempts any kind of development from a wind turbine complex. So they made it quite known that their license that the federal government issued them is going to be in jeopardy if the county commissioners allow the Heelstone project to go forward, because it's so close to where they transmit out.
I want to switch gears for a minute to property tax. And Shane, you're right, what you was talking about. This is a fact. I live at Rock Springs. We have land in Garfield, Rosebud, and Custer County, which you all know that. Clearwater project was all 3 counties. Property taxes in Custer County went up 4.5%. Okay, I'll back up. For 5 years, my county commissioner promised us that because we got the wind farm, that our property taxes would go down. Okay? Last year, Custer County taxes went up 6.5%. Rosebud counties went up 4.5%. Garfield County went up 31%. I'm telling you, it's propaganda. Don't believe, they can tell you that the property taxes will go down because the wind farm is coming in. Don't bet on it.
Well, that's a good point, but it's historically supported. Because if you go back into the 80s, when we were going to legalize the casinos and the gambling, we were told that all that money was going to go into education, property taxes were going to go down, we just needed to vote to legalize gambling in Montana and our problems be solved. Not to be stopped, you flash forward to just a few years ago, we were told if you will now legalize recreational marijuana, all of our problems will be solved for tax money, because that money is going to go to the county, it's going to go to the cities, goes to the schools. If you just vote for recreational marijuana, you're going to get a whole bunch of money and your property taxes are going to go down. So we're looking at the same thing. This is just historically supported. You can't bank on that. You had a question.
I have 2 things. I address the gentleman's statement. The Bechtel engineer that I talked to out there at Colstrip said that currently the scrubbers are taking out 93% of the emissions. So the emission issue isn't there. He also said that they have the technology to take out 98%, but it's not cost effective. The other thing that I would ask you, are any of these people required to do an EA or an EIS before they install any of these things?
Well, that's a good question on the impact statement, environmental impact statement. For Montana, all they have to do is go to Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, and you get a permit. It's a basic construction permit for like water runoff. That's it. And then they kind of have to put their put their plan together so they can bond in 15 years. But it's really simple, okay? Now, if they want to do something on federal land, then it all changes. Then they got to do all that. So what's happening right now, I guess I can fill in a little bit. When Trump came in January 20th, he did an executive order and basically interim zone, what I talked about earlier, the United States, federal land, the interim zone said, hey, we're going to stop and we're going to look at the health effects of wind turbines on humans and animals. And the Department of Commerce is doing a study on the national security issue because all of our stuff comes from across the pond. And if we rely on wind turbines and then we have to fix them, but we got to get all the parts from China. So the Department of Commerce is actually doing that study. The Department of Transportation is coming out with a recommendation going through Congress for a 1.2 mile setback from a road because of a study, and I think I might have the study, but there's a study the Department of Transportation did that any closer than 1.2 miles scrambles the emergency frequency for radios for emergency vehicles and trains. And under the Biden administration, they waived the safety standards, the safety regulations 33 times and gave a permit to a wind development. So the Department of Transportation has put a stop to that. They're trying to get a 1.2 mile setback from a train and a road for safety. So go back to your question, on federal ground, they'd have to do it in environmental impact, not for private land in the state of Montana. I don't know about state of Montana land, I'm not sure. They do have to do bird studies because in this map, there are a few eagles and there is the endangered, the brown ear-tipped bat. We have that in Northern Perry County. So they're doing studies for birds. They basically got to find if there is any, and then they got to have like there's a spot right in here where there's an eagle and they have a big, they leave a gap. They have to do some studies there.
I'd like to put some stuff to bed here. One is they're talking about taxes going up and down. The state regulates tax income and have an assessor come every 2 years and evaluate the property. But that's on market value. So if the market is up, like you said, several counties have went up this and that. Well, in Bozeman or Galvin County, it went up 60%. So I think you got your stars where you're at here because it's a lot less. But that absolutely has to do with people moving in here and buying up property. And that's why a lot of people that are third and fourth generation people out of Bozeman or on the west end of the state is coming this way because they can't afford to pay the taxes on the property. Now, the second question I have is how many parts per million would it be for something to be poisonous, on these tribes, where it would be regulated as a deal? I mean, it's like anything else, a little bit probably ain't gonna hurt you, but maybe in this, a little bit will kill you. I don't know. And I don't, my question is, has anybody worked up
Yeah, so the best way to get that specific information, if do you have this handout? Okay, just go to that and read it, and it gets probably more technical than you want to know, but the EPA's already done all of that when they put that ruling out and determined that they were hazardous waste, so that you can get the specifics out of that.
One just follow-up question is, who's going to enforce these regulations you want to put on setbacks and that?
So, theoretically, the regulations get approved by the commissioners, and then there'll be a permit. So then they have to come in and get the permit, and then then that would be in the permit process. So when they go out to build, I'm assuming the county will have somebody verify that they have a setback.
So the county actually enforces that?
Well, it would have to be through the county, it'd be through the zoning and planning commission and or the county to do that, yeah. That's in statute in the handout. If you go to the statute, it'll show you about enforcement, like it's a fine so much a day, different things. One thing you asked about the parts per million of contamination, there's wind turbines around the country, right? Well, there's a spot in Australia that does have contamination. And so they're checking cattle when they leave the station. And I'm involved in a business that does quite a bit of business with Tyson Foods. We take cattle to Tyson Foods. And they're working on finding out where cattle come from so they can see what hazards might be in that area. And this is one of the things, because we ship about all of our beef to Europe. And so they test for this type of things. And then they'll say, okay, Rick Holden here has got cattle that's right next to a wind farm. Maybe we don't want to buy his cattle. These are discussions that are happening are actually happening today. So us as producers, and not just the cattle side, you get to the grain side, and I'm trying to get Senex Harvest States and Glendive to give us an answer. If you look at this, there's one spot right here. This half section is surrounded by 5 turbines. And that's a neighbor. So what's going to happen when he takes his crop and there's some sort of an issue? Is Senex Harvest States going to sample that grain special because it's right next to wind turbines? So we're trying to get a clarification on what's going to really happen so we don't get 5, 10 years down the road and then all of a sudden that neighbor gets the shaft. Those are questions we want to ask right now and find out, because that's happened in other states. There's people that have had their land condemned. They can't put up hay, they can't sell hay. You go to North Dakota, they got kicked out of their grazing. The landowners had a turbine blow apart, and we talked about this quite a bit in Glendive. It come apart, and they got kicked out of their land. I'm not sure where that's sitting today. We haven't found out, but this is all things that are happening.
Yeah, I can give you a quick update. So, true story. A guy in Edgeley, North Dakota, saw that I was working on this issue, and he contacted me and said, hey, I made the biggest mistake of my life because I didn't listen to the older generation. But I put a turbine up in the middle of my cow pasture, and the wind blew so strong one night that it snapped one of those blades off. When it snapped the blade off, it covered his whole cow pasture with all this fiberglass shreds and stuff, and his wife went out and took pictures, and they sent me some pictures back of what it looked like. The wind company told him, said, yeah, you can't put those cattle in there. And he was going to go in there in March and he was going to calve his cattle out. They said, no, you can't put them in there because we're going to have to clean it up, 1, and 2, it wouldn't be healthy for them because they would rub the blade with huge blades laying on the ground. The cattle would rub on it, work those fibers into their hide, and then all the grass, they'd be eating fiberglass. So they said, well, when you coming? Well, we don't have a crew. We don't have a crew big enough to handle this, but we're going to come. So we go March, April, May, June. I call them back, and I say, what's going on? Nothing. I say, can you put cattle in there? No, can't do anything. We go June, we go July, August. Now we're into September. Call him back. He goes, no. They haven't showed up. They did come get the blade, but they haven't cleaned up the mess. So as of September, he wasn't able to use his property for agriculture. He had to keep everything out so they could clean it up. In the meantime, all the grass is growing up all over the summer. You can imagine it wasn't grazed. So now you're looking at, over Edgeley, North Dakota, you're probably looking at close to knee-high grass. How in the world are you going to send a crew out there with shop vacs strapped to their back, trying to pick up all these little fibers that are scattered and over onto the neighbor's place? So that's true.
Whatever happened to Livingston with all that on farm stuff?
Well, I'm not sure on that, but if I could add to Rick about this blade coming apart, that's why we propose these districts in Prairie and Dawson County, so we could have the setbacks. So if something does come apart, it doesn't affect the neighbor's property. Because if the neighbor gets affected, who are they going to sue? Me, the landowner with the turbine on it, and the developer. Well, the developer's got, the developer probably has some sort of insurance, but you're going to have a hard time getting a lawsuit through him. I don't have coverage because I'm excluded. And there also is, and I have it in my packet here, but there's also a wind turbine blade exemption. If you get general farm insurance, you cannot cover a wind turbine blade failure. So I'd have no insurance except, whatever my liability amount is, and they come after me. And so that's why we want to have these setbacks in our district, so we all get along and we're not suing each other. It's real simple because it's happened everywhere else. We don't want to deal with it in the future.
Rick, you mentioned that the leading edges on the blades start to deteriorate after 4 years, and that 8 years they're delaminating. What's the lifespan that the manufacturers give for the life of the blades?
So the guy over in Edgeley, North Dakota, that contacted me, I asked him that, and he said that basically it looks like they're trying to replace those within 10 years. But what they'll do is once they start to delaminate, and they'll send a crew out, and they'll coat. They'll try to coat that leading edge with more resin to reinforce it and to stop it from flaking off, because it's a constant maintenance thing. And so that's just what you have to do.
So I would assume that the deterioration is exponential. Once it starts, it just gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, I mean, once you create a friction zone on the leading edge of the blade, it's not smooth anymore. So it's going to catch more wind as it spins just because it's rough. Yeah.
So, in the United States, we have a lot younger wind turbine life, or we've had a lot less years than in Europe. In Europe is where you want to go find the studies. They have studies, and it's in the tons that come off the blades, okay? And Senator Phelan has a colleague up there, Senator Galt, and he has wind turbines there too, the guy. And I talked to him one time briefly during the session, and he has somebody come out every year and coats them. And I'm assuming, he does so many a year. So it's an ongoing thing, but it's in the tons per turbine that come off.
So when they replace the blades, take them down, where are they disposing them from Montana? Where are the Montana blades going?
Well, supposedly, we've been told from the department that they cannot dispose of those in Montana. They are not supposed to be, but we're hearing some stories where they are actually digging holes and burying them in Montana, but we don't know for sure. But they are not, the department in Helena specifically told me that that is not something that should be buried in Montana. It has to go out of state to some place.
Okay.
I think the one that we do that is Casper, isn't it?
Well, your son lives by Casper, and I guess they haul a bunch of down there, and they're just stockpiling them because they don't know what to do with them.
So when they take them down and they transport, are they encapsulating those, or are they sealing them so that the
I don't know. I've never watched them.
Because that's a source of contamination.
Yeah.
Just going down the road. So you talk about setbacks from property lines.
Yeah.
Where they're spinning. And they're going down the road. They're dropping shards of fiberglass and PFAS as they're being done.
Yeah, we would never get away with it.
There's like 70,000, 80,000 wind turbines in America, so you take that times 3, there's 240,000 blades that are going to be going into expiration directly over the next decade. So there's going to be a lot of blades to stack somewhere and do something with.
Yes, I'm John Killen. First off, I would like to extend an invitation to anyone that wants to come out and see the wind farm. I live in it. I've got generators within a half a mile of my house. I don't want to get too windy, but I'm going to back up to when this first came about. Man showed up at the door, wanted to talk to me about building a wind farm. And he had this lease agreement, and we studied it, took it to the attorney, made some adjustments. And I told the kids, I've lived there all my life, and probably the first part of my experience on the ranch, we had some oil leasing. We haven't had an oil lease for years, but they'd come in, lease our minerals, we're gonna drill. Hell, they never drilled an oil well. So I told my kids, I said, they ain't never gonna build a wind farm. Let's just take this lease money and run. Well, they built it. And I wondered, am I gonna like this? I really wondered about that. I think it's the best thing I ever did. I think it is going to help my children stay on that ranch for maybe another generation. 'Cause it's not going to get any easier, folks. Right now, we're having Walmart's coming in and buying a ton of rangeland around us. And if that's what we want to see, big corporate coming in and taking over our agricultural land, it's going to happen. But anyways, I live right in this thing. The noise doesn't bother me. The lights do not bother me, and I'm not wanting to debate here, but they do not light up the whole countryside. Yeah, you can see them blinking, but hell, when I come over Airport Hill, I can see lights blinking. So anyways, that's not a concern. Just in my mind, a little common sense about these fiberglass shards. Let's talk about what the hoods of semi-trucks are made of. Are we worried about them going down the road? Wind blowing that out into our pastures? I haven't heard anything about that. How many fiberglass water tanks are out there watering our cows? Rubbing on them. If we were concerned about things rubbing on these blades for a serious length of time, they were just out before construction and they were not worried about anything rubbing on them. Did not hurt them. We had a tremendous hailstorm go through the ranch, probably the worst I've ever seen. Completely spring wheat knee high, and it mowed it off just like you took your lawnmower. Destroyed my son's house. Winds unimaginable. Right in the middle of the field stands 2 turbines. They never shut down. And you can stand and look at them blades, and I don't see a mark on them. So, I don't know, maybe 8 years down the road this will all change, but again, I mean, we can all talk good and bad and this and that, but the invitation extends to anybody that wants to come and see the finished project, and you can make up your own mind about the goods and the bad about it. That's the best thing I can do. I think the Angela Wind project in its entirety, at least $3 million of new money comes into this area. I don't see where that can be a bad thing, because we're going to spend some of that. I already have. If we want to stay in eastern Montana and just let it go on the way it's always been and keep all this out, that's fine. But from my experience, I'm okay with it, and it has not harmed us in any way that I can see. We have had a few erosion problems around these where it wasn't sloped off correctly, and I've called them and they've been there within a couple of days to remedy it. So I've had a good rapport with the wind farm, and the contracts before you sign them are negotiable. I'm not here to tell anyone to put them on their land. I'm not here to tell anyone not to. That's their own decision. But go into it with your eyes open and look at that contract, and it is negotiable. And when I get home, I'm going to get mine out, but I don't think this language that I see here is in my contract about the glitter and the noise or any of that. But I'm going to double check it and see.
Yeah, I appreciate the gentleman's points there. You won't find those effects in your contract. That's for the neighbors. And that's why we're doing these districts in Prairie and Dawson County, is so we can protect the neighbors. It isn't to keep them out, it's to protect the neighbors. Because right now, it's in your contract that says you have to go and lobby for 0 setbacks. And that's a fact, because I've read the contracts that Perry County had submitted to them, and my understanding is the same as the contract was given to you, or to the people in Angelo, not you specifically, but landowners are supposed to lobby for 0 setbacks. And so in Perry and Dawson, we're not telling them to go away, we just want to have setbacks between property lines, benefiting property owners and non-benefiting property owners, so we don't have any of the issues that might come about in the future. You know, I respect your point of view, but that's what we're doing. We're not telling them to leave, we're just telling them to live by our rules. I'll give it, Neva's been wanting to get a question real quick.
Thank you. I'm Neva Rathbun from Terry, Montana. I serve on the town council, and there have been some folks asking about what is this going to do to the town of Terry. We're short on housing and this type of thing, and I understand, and I may not have understood it correctly, that when the oil boom came, that was one of the reasons why the sleep in came into Miles City. And have you heard anything from NextEra or any other wind energy companies of what they, or how are they going to benefit the community? Have they offered to put up a new housing plan? Have they, are they willing to put up streets or roads that are damaged, or and that type of thing?
Well, so the seminars that I've been to that they've talked on that, they plan on bringing in man camps temporarily just for their crew, so they can get them put up. So they'll have a man camp somewhere, they'll negotiate that. And then these impact payments, upfront impact payments to the county are supposed to offset any of the impacts that they might have, like increased road use and things like that. But other than that, they're not a housing development company. So the people in that community, wherever they're going to build, they're going to have to decide whether or not that's a business decision that they're going to make to try and capture some of that increased housing opportunities, I guess.
Have they offered anything to Custer County, any of the wind farms?
I don't know anything about what they're offering to Custer County. Question in the back?
Let me just say one thing. I have B&Bs, and I have hunters. It's steady, it's nice, and we'll make a lot of money for a year or two with this. But I look at long term. What's going to happen in 5, 6, 7, 10, 15? I talked to a gentleman that's with Fish and Game. It definitely changes the route of the birds. And so that's going to be gone in Terry, Montana. And we have that. That supports our town a lot. As does the view. People, my 500 didn't draw this year. They're staying anyway because of the view. They love coming out there and seeing the view, the northern lights, the whole thing. So I look at long-term income, not 2 years of that. Where's all the in our town, all the little stores, is all the people that come in to see the view shed, shop, hunt, all of that. It's huge in our community. So this get-rich-quick thing, I think, is detrimental. My personal opinion. In Terry, Montana, I moved back to Terry, Montana. I'm 4th generation, and I moved back. I lived in Colstrip. I worked in Colstrip. A lot of steam is promoted as smoke. So it's cheap and clean, but that's a whole other topic, as we say. But anyway, that's my personal feeling, being a long-time generational resident, and I have kids and grandkids that are living there. And I'd like them to live in the same area and the same place. We're an ag. I like my ag people. We're farming, we're ranching, that's what we are. And it's not a farm. When they call it a farm, it doesn't move. It's not a farm, it's an industrial development. Right on the get-go, they're deceiving. say what you are. You're an industrial development. I didn't move back to eastern Montana to live in an industrial development. I saw what they did to the Snake River Valley in Idaho.
Could I make one other point on this? When you look at that lease, there are 9 or 12 things that you sign on to the easement. Your neighbor doesn't sign on to that easement, they're taking virtually. And if it was a 3-year deal, talking a different thing, I have a friend in this room that let me read her lease. And this lease is for 37 years plus 2 10-year extensions at their discretion, not yours. What's this world going to look like in 57 years? I promise you my expiration date's going to come up before 57 years. But grandchildren, great-grandchildren, they'll be here. If we don't think through this, if we don't address everything, every issue, I'm not in a hurry for any of this thing. Let's slow the train down and make sure we understand it, what's it going to look like. And even on our best day, do I know what's going to happen in 57 years? Absolutely not. But I have a responsibility to citizens and kids, family, that I do the very best I can. And that 57 years disturbs me. Just like you said, Walmart's buying stuff up all around the country. Other corporations are. We just, I like where I live, like what I do. Come from the city, and they can have that. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm Don Schneering from Terry. I spent 32 years working at a coal-fired power plant in Wisconsin. And I can speak pretty clearly about what pollution is for a coal-fired power plant. When you see the smoke, that's almost all moisture. The coal has a lot of moisture in it. It goes through the boiler, and it comes out with the smoke. And everything you're looking at is water. But there's hardly any dust coming out, and we call that pollution. It's water. Okay? The other thing is, it does release about 10% of what comes out is carbon dioxide. Now, many people wonder, oh, this is terrible, terrible. Reality is, you can go on the internet and do a search for the CO2 level that has been averaged in the last 20 or 30 years. I did that. And they had, what it was is 0.03% was the normal CO2 in the atmosphere. That's very little. And now it's 0.0419%. After all this terrible pollution. And it all grinds down to CO2 helps hay and grasses to grow more. Because every green thing that makes oxygen, they need CO2. And if we cut out all the CO2, we're going to die. I'm sorry. That's the plain and simple part of it. And as far as getting rid of coal-fired power plants, people don't realize if you get rid of them, there's technical things you can have problems with. One of which is when a line goes down or a bunch of other power plants shut down all of a sudden because of a big problem, a tornado goes through, whatever, that the frequency drops off and all the generators that are hooked up, everything else around the country, they got to pick up that load. And the only reason they can do it quickly because there's a big steam drum in the top of the boilers that holds a lot of really high pressure steam. And a lot of it's about 3,000 PSI in that neighborhood. They can instantly pick that load up. Now, if you've got a bunch of solar situations, wind power, if they get overloaded, they're just going to stop turning. and things are starting to go bad for you. Your transmission lines now are gonna get overloads. There's just an endless number of things that the public has no clue to. The CO2, you see it in the paper, that Billings Gazette. They said, well, you always like to put that little thing in there about the CO2. And they're just so full of baloney. You know, they're trying to mix lies with some facts and make it, all of us are supposed to believe this thing about CO2. It really isn't right.
No, you make a really good point, sir, is that's a whole other topic too, like the other gentleman here had a discussion about where the power come from. But your point about CO2 levels is another topic for society to have, and what we've done for the last 20, 30 years trying to go green when the CO2 level is hardly even measurable. And the science behind it is so simple, but we've been able to be sold into this green thing. That's a whole other discussion. But I will say from personal experience, from when, Texas brags about having so much solar and wind, right? And then they brag about it all the time because it's a large percentage of their electricity. So what happened in 19, wasn't it? When in 19? 21? Whatever it was a few years ago. And they had the ice storm in Texas, correct? Yes. Where did they go get the power? They couldn't start that coal plant up because they didn't have it. They turned the power out here, north of Terry, in the middle of the winter. And the power goes out, and they're like, deal with it. 3 times. We had to pay for their choice to go down the wrong path. But that's a whole other topic. I don't want to get off on that, so I'm sorry. But next question.
I've got a question for you. If you have got 60% of the signatures,
Bob.
You've got 60% of the signatures, correct? So
Yes.
why does the commissioners have to okay it? Because to me, that's the people voting right there.
Yeah, you're right. So in the type 1 zoning, we got to have 60% of the landowners in the area, and we have that in both cases. Now, if you're going to do the whole county, the type 2 zoning, where you want to zone the whole county like we did, the commissioners still have to take it through a process. And notice it for so many days, take comment. So it still has to go through the process. The problem in Terry, and we have to really find out what the commissioner's going to do. We don't have a planning and zoning commission in Perry County. We probably should have one. We don't have to have one, but I think the commissioner's going to go that way. So their commissioner's going to look at it, then give it to the planning and zoning commission. They'll make recommendations, look at it, and give it back. Dawson County already has the planning and zoning commission because they have 2 type 1 districts already. So it'll go right to it, and then they'll make recommendations, come back to the commissioners. So there's just a procedure there. So everybody can comment because it will affect people in the county.
Shane, can you, I think you just researched this, because Custer County has a zoning.
No, I don't think the county does.
County does not, okay, because we were wondering if they could still zoning 1 if they had zoning 2.
Yeah, Custer County can. Like if somebody up by Angela or south of Miles City or Garfield, Rosebud, whatever, you can still go make a district. And you can put in your regulations and you can put in your setbacks. So then you as landowners get to decide how your neighborhood's going to be developed. We decided we don't want a company, a $150 billion company from Florida, to decide how our community is going to be developed. So we decided to do it ourselves. And that's the brass tacks of it.
Are you saying that 3 county commissioners then can override 60%?
That's right, Bob. 2, because 2 can vote it down. Yeah, so yeah.
The way the current statutes are, the commissioners always have the final say. So the planning board just gives them a recommendation. They tell them, hey, we got 60% or better. This is our recommendation, but the commissioners ultimately still, by statute, have the final say.
Will next era be at that meeting on the 22nd?
Oh yeah, they've been in all the meetings, yeah. We've been actually in Dawson County, we've testified for 6 months on all of this.
Okay, I just recently moved to Smile City, but I have a lot of experience with the wind farms, because I moved from the High Line, and we've had them up there for about 10 years. And just a couple of things that I've noticed we haven't discussed, and I wondered if you had known about this or are looking into this. The first one is that Nutrient is the one that was up there, and they don't have a lot of integrity, right? And so after all the tax breaks that they received, I sat on the school board at the time that this happened. After all the tax breaks that they got, they still paid their taxes under protest. And therefore, we ended up just about killing off our budget for our C school. We couldn't even pay our staff. And it was horrible. And they ended up settling for pennies on the dollar. So that's one thing that needs to be brought to people to be aware of that, and the guidelines that need to be on these companies need to be very stringent. I don't think they should ever be allowed to pay their taxes under protest. I just don't think that when they've gotten those amount of tax breaks that should ever happen. And it went on for 4 years. And the other thing is that hasn't been mentioned tonight is that the rattlesnakes, the vibrations from the turbines. So now all the rattlesnakes are migrating, so where they've never had rattlesnakes in the cities and the towns, they have now all moved into the towns. And so people are not very happy about that, right? When they're finding tons of rattlesnakes in their backyards that came off the High Line and the rim, and now they're migrating down, and they've done studies, and they believe that that's because of all the vibrations that they're chasing off the rattlesnakes, and the rattlesnakes have nowhere to go.
What town is that?
I came from Sunburst, Montana, North Toole County.
Yeah.
And so the wind farms are on the what we call the rim, right, between Sunburst and Keevan.
Yeah.
And then there's another big wind farm outside of Cutbank, which is in Glacier County. Same thing. All of us are experiencing the same thing with the rattlesnakes, and killed our little C schools in that area as far as the budget went.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think some pretty stringent guidelines need to be set on them so that they're not allowed to, number one, I don't think they should ever be able to pay taxes under protest as a business, because they've already gotten such big tax breaks. And the other thing is that there needs to be some work done on not just birds, but rattlesnakes.
No, that's a good point, and that wasn't something we're going to talk about tonight, but there are a lot of environmental concerns. That's why President Trump put the executive order in place to stop and study it. We talk about this a lot in Prairie and Dawson. That's why we have the setbacks so we don't affect the neighbor and his wildlife. That's why we have the setback from water. Paying under protest would be something for Senator Phelan and the Representative commence to discuss. And in the end, it's a whole other topic also. That's why we're here. We just talked about the CO2. But if it wasn't for the tremendous amount of tax credits and tax breaks offered by each state, and I won't say offered by each state, I would say legislated by lobbyists, and Senator Phelan could talk about that. The chairman of the Senate Energy Committee. I'm just going to say it. He is the chief lobbyist.
Yeah.
And that's a fact. I want to say.
Sure that he did get paid.
Yeah. So that's a whole other topic, and I appreciate your input because we have read that article about them paying tax under protest and how it broke your school.
In the Great Falls Tribune.
In the Great Falls Tribune, yeah. So that's something Senator Phelan and Representative Commence should look into, because that's a really good point. Because I'm not sure the company you have, and then people have opinions about the developer we have here, but that's the developer. Then they kick it, then I'll tell you the whole game, but that'll probably take too long. So then they sell, okay? They take their depreciation, they take their tax credits, but then they sell it for this much money. Then you have this guy running it. He may not be a very good guy, but then he sells it to me, and I'm even worse than this guy. So then where are you at? And that's a really good point as we go through time.
There needs to be guidelines, like as far as when they let them or license them,
If they license them, or if they give them the ability to put those turbines up, they need to have guidelines of this is what you cannot do. You will not ever pay your taxes under protest because you've gotten all these tax benefits. You will not be able to do that. And to go settle after all those tax rates on 10 cents on the dollar was crazy.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point, and Senator Phelan's right, putting it down right now.
Yeah, and so I think that's the biggest thing. And then I understand we need power, but then also to look at what's, like you said, good neighbor. Well, it's not a good neighbor when you dump all the rattlesnakes in their backyard. And so that's definitely not a good neighbor thing either. So there's a lot of issues there, but tax base was a big one. And we fought that on the school board I was on the school board for 6 years, and for 3 years of it, we had to almost get rid of teachers over it.
Good point, thank you.
Yeah, just real quick, just a couple points. I really appreciate your comments on what are we going to do. Because I am Greg Commence and I sit on an energy committee in Helena. So we hear about that. And we're looking at our electrical rates, all of us, they're going to double. I mean, there's such a shortage of electricity. And the problem that you see with renewable electricity, it's called baseload energy. Because every megawatt made by renewable energy has to have a huge generator to produce that baseload. So when the wind quits blowing, that energy has to be made up by another source. And I don't know how many of you know much about the Laurel Power Plant that Northwest Energy built, but it has 16 giant diesel engines, and they just sit there. And when the wind's blowing and the sun's shining, they don't even run. And when the wind goes down, giant engine number 1 starts. And then they'll fire up clear to all 16 of them. And then when the wind and the sun starts blowing, the engine's back off. But boy, the expense that it takes to build these type of facilities, just so that we can use renewable energy, we're just going to, and that's what's coming. That's what we just can't seem to stop the machine. But that's what's coming. But we're all gonna pay double in a few years. And I sit on that energy committee and I listen to this stuff all the time. And boy, it is just tough problems with no simple solutions.
Great. Next month, did you guys hit next month?
Because I'm on the planning committee for the Patriot group here. Next month, we've got Austin Knudsen coming and we've got Alan Olson coming, and we're going to be talking about energy. And we need some answers. So we're trying here.
Great. I'd just like to, I know it's going to get late, but if there's any questions pertaining to like zoning or the environmental concerns and stuff, I mean, I know there's a lot of other things with wind, but if you guys want to keep to that, because I'm not sure what time you want to shut down.
Soon.
Yeah.
I want to ask one more question. Does the windmills, are they economically feasible? That's the big question. If we're just getting tax breaks, we'll just have the government pay every farmer. And that's kind of what we're doing with the windmills right now, isn't it? They don't make any money. The investment's terrible, and all we're doing is give somebody rich a tax break, right?
That probably could be a pretty good opinion. Yeah, I mean that's another topic, but I think you're probably right.
Yeah.
Lady, or Mr. Singleton.
So I think we all need to take a real hard look at ourselves. We are addicted to energy and drugs in this country. Those two things. Something that I think we've overlooked is what's going on with Black Hills buying out Northwestern Energy. Northwestern Energy is predicted with the AI centers coming in. Every bit of energy that Northwestern produces now will have to be doubled just to supply the AI centers. There was a real good article in the Mouse City Star about a month ago that went over it very well, but I think we really need to decide a bigger issue is the AI centers. Where is the energy going to come from? And why did Black Hills buy out Northwestern Energy? Thank you.
So to Mr. Singleton's point, and the gentleman here about power, the cost of utilities going up, it's going to bring in American ingenuity, because if the price goes up, former Senator Holden and I, we might just go make our own gas generator. We'll drill our own gas well, we'll make our own generator, and we'll power up Prairie County. I mean, that's what's going to happen. It's going to come to a point where ordinary people are going to do extraordinary things. And as a society, we want to have all these data centers and stuff. I guess we're not going to solve that tonight. If prices get too expensive, ingenuity come in, and we'll probably try to figure it out. It's going to suck. We shouldn't be going there, but we're going to have to do that.
Okay, so one of my main issues with these data centers, AI centers, that I think few people understand, but they're starting to understand, is not only the tremendous amount of energy that they're going to need, but the tremendous amount of water that they are going to need to be able to cool off, and so that they don't start on fire and have a prairie fire everywhere, because that's where they don't want them in, near the cities. That wrecks their view. So we're just gonna wreck it over here because nobody cares, right? We're gonna have water tables that are gonna be non-existent. We're gonna have wells running dry. Rivers, have you seen the Yellowstone River lately? It's pretty low. And we're all waiting for that mountain snow to come down and replenish it. That's gonna be a while. And the wind power is just it's a fad that is gone by the wayside. It is not going to be able to keep up with the data centers and the AI centers. And here's the thing, is that farmers and ranchers are very intelligent people. People underestimate them all the time. And it amazes me because I grew up in town. I mean, the closest thing I came to in agriculture growing up, I was in a little town, Hysham. But I did FFA. But even I, growing up in town, now I'm a rancher's wife, but I figured that a little bit out. That we're going to be starving pretty soon if we keep using these huge land masses that usually take up our farmland. We're going to be starving. And what happens when people starve? They're gonna take your livestock and your livestock. They're gonna decide they're gonna break into your house to get some food and maybe stay warm. I don't know, but these are the basics of life that people don't think about. Is there's only so many areas where you can grow food. You can't. It's hard to grow food on top of a mountain. So we got to get some things figured out.
Yeah, so our regulations about data centers, Weebo County, when they did their zoning last year, they had in there, a permit for a data center, they had setbacks, and they had this whole thing. Our regulations don't really deal with data centers. Our regulations are purely height-driven with setbacks and acreage size with setbacks. That is another topic about data centers, but any other questions based on what Rick and I talked about?
Last question. I just have a remark, and maybe it's probably for the next meeting that concerns energy, but I don't understand why the state of Montana is not building a nuclear energy plant. For crying out loud, it's the cheapest energy. What is the matter with us?
Well, Joan, unfortunately, that's a society question again. We have electrical generation in an oligopoly. It was just brought up here about, Mr. Singleton brought up about Northwest Energy again about it. We have an oligopoly, and basic economics tell you what's going to happen with an oligopoly over time. And they're going to crush the consumer, okay? That's what's going to happen. Then the state comes in. It's a whole economic thing, but it's a good point.
Very last one.
So, just to expand on what this great lady to my right mentioned, the nuclear, and Duncan scared the heck out of it. He remembers all the hoorah about 3 Mile Island, which was way overdone. Turns out I have a great uncle who was a civil engineer on Fort Peck Dam. He was just barely out of college. Then he was part of the engineering team that did the VA hospital here in Miles City. Well, guess where he went next? He went nuclear. Okay, this was 70-some years ago. Went to Twin Falls, Idaho. That nuclear plant is still running today, and it's as safe as it was then. How many years have we used nuclear power with submarines for our Navy? Have you ever heard of a sailor that glowed? Have you ever heard of a nuclear accident? Duncan loves fish. Has his sub, have they ever, damaged the fish? Anyway, it's very exciting what can be done with modern nuclear. They're saying that the rods don't even have the kind of half-life that are really dangerous, like my great uncle's plant in Twin Falls. There is a disposal cost at that plant. But anyway, it's exciting what's coming. And for us as taxpayers to subsidize non-community corporations that don't have long investments here, I just think is really sad. And there's some people figuring out the math. The disposal of these windmills when they shut down, when this one goes broke or others, who's stuck with that disposal? My understanding is most of the landowners have signed agreements that they are going to be responsible for the disposal. And we all know that they're hiding how hazardous some of that is. I found it interesting 2 months ago, I purchased calves under some windmills up north in Angela. And one of the windmill turbines was leaking oil, major leak. And I was shocked that it was still turning. Where's the computer sensor? Why didn't it shut it down? I have no idea how long that leaked before somebody did something about it, but I know this, if I get pulled over by the DOT to check the tail light on the back of my horse trailer and my pickup's dripping a little bit of Prestone or oil, I'm gonna have a big project ahead of me. Anyway, just some of the things that come up that probably shouldn't. But I'm pretty excited about your meeting that you're going to have next on energy, because Montana has great opportunities if we're proactive and we don't get too greedy and we don't think short term.
Yes. That's a good point. 1.1 times the height is what is recommended around the country mostly. Montana doesn't even have a setback for property owners. They can build it right on the property line. And so when the oil leaks, it goes to the neighbor, and that's why we want to have the setbacks. The meeting next month is not about so much about energy. It's about, to Joan's point and question about why are we doing something, is you have BlackRock and several of these major gigantic entities that bought into fossil fuel companies, shrank their footprint, invested in the green energy at the same time. It was an investment antitrust act. And Ken Paxton, the Attorney General in Texas, filed it. They thought it was going to go nowhere. The judge accepted it. And this gets to the whole point of where we are in society. We have an oligopoly coming in, rigging this system, and taking advantage of the rigged system over here. And all of us are paying for it like this. So this is going to be a huge thing, talking about a lawsuit on how our energy prices are going up because of the rigging by oligopolies. And that's it. You can look up Ken Paxton lawsuit, and you can read about it, but it'd be one heck of a meeting to come to. I'd like to thank everybody. I'd like to thank the Patriots Roundtable. And
Now, same thing. It's getting late. I know we need to move along. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all for coming, and don't forget, November 2nd, the event will be held at the Range Riders Museum. Thank you.
I didn't have anything about this, but I think